I wasn't supposed to be on Highway 17 that night. I was supposed to be at my buddy Kieran's place in Sudbury, watching the Leafs game with a beer I'd already paid for. But his basement flooded and he called me at 4 in the afternoon to say, "Don't bother coming. We'll do it next week." So I turned around somewhere past Perry Sound and started the 2-hour drive back down to Barrie alone, in the rain, with nothing but a Tim Hortons double-double going cold in the cup holder. It was November. One of those nights where the sky and the road look like the same color, and you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. I saw the hazard lights maybe a kilometer before I reached her. A silver Civic had gone off the shoulder and nosed into the ditch, not dramatically, not rolled over or anything, just angled down at that sick 45-degree drop. That means the driver didn't brake, they just drifted. The hazards were on, the engine was still running. I could see steam coming up from somewhere under the hood. I pulled over without thinking about it. I don't know what I expected when I walked up to the driver's side window. Someone on their phone. Someone already calling CAA. I knocked on the glass and a woman looked up at me, and her face was completely blank, not scared. Just gone. Like she'd been sitting there for a while and had stopped expecting anything. She was maybe 32, dark coat, hair pulled back, one of those canvas tote bags on the passenger seat with a library logo on the side. She cracked the window about 2 inches. "Are you okay?" I said. She didn't answer right away. Then, "I think so. You've been here a while?" She looked at the dashboard clock like she was checking for the first time. Maybe 20 minutes. 20 minutes. In November, on a highway, with no one stopping. "Okay," I said. "Let's get you out of there." Her name was Fiona. I found that out while we were waiting for the tow truck, standing under the hatchback of my Subaru with the rain coming sideways, and her holding a gas station blanket I'd had in the back since a camping trip 2 summers ago. She said it like she was reporting something. Fiona Marsh, like I'd asked for her full name, which I hadn't. She worked at a public library branch in Collingwood. She'd been driving back from visiting her mother in North Bay. She hadn't been crying when I found her, but I got the feeling she had been at some point earlier in the drive, before the ditch happened. I didn't ask about that. I waited with her because it didn't feel right to leave. She didn't ask me to stay. She also didn't tell me to go. At some point she said, "You didn't have to stop." "Yeah, I did," I said. "It's -8. She almost smiled. Not quite. The tow driver, stocky guy from Midland, name tag said Gord, got the Civic up without any trouble, but the front bumper had cracked against something in the ditch and one of the headlights was out. He said he could get her to a shop in Barrie, but driving it further tonight wasn't a great idea. "I can get you there," I said. "Barrie, I'm going that way anyway." Fiona looked at me. Not suspicious exactly, but measuring. I understood that. A woman alone, a highway, a stranger. I would have understood if she'd said no thank you and called someone. She said okay. We didn't talk much in the car. She looked out the window. The rain got heavier, and then somewhere past Aurelia turned to sleet. I had the heat on and the radio low. Some CBC overnight thing, just voices in the background. At one point, she said, "What do you do?" "I do residential electrical, own my own company. Small, just me and 2 guys." She nodded. "You're good at being calm." I didn't know what to say to that. I dropped her off at a Holiday Inn near the Barrie GO station. She had her card, she said. She could get a room and figure out the car situation in the morning. She grabbed her tote bag and opened the door and then paused. "Thank you," she said. "No problem," I said, and that was it. She got out. I drove home. I made toast, watched 20 minutes of something on Netflix I don't even remember, and went to bed. I did not think I would ever see Fiona Marsh again. 3 weeks later, she knocked on my front door. I need to explain something about where I live. I have a house in Barrie, a little 1970s bungalow on a street where everybody's got a truck in the driveway and a dog that barks at the mail. It's not a hard place to find if you know the address, but it's also not a place strangers show up unannounced on a Wednesday evening in late November. I heard the knock and figured it was my neighbor Warren, who occasionally comes over to complain about the city's pothole situation. I opened the door in my socks with a spatula in my hand because I was making stir-fry. It was Fiona. She was holding a casserole dish covered in foil. She had a dark green jacket on, her hair down this time. She looked considerably more present than she had in the ditch. "I found your business," she said. "Hartwell Electrical. There's only one in Barrie with your first name and a Subaru Outback in the Google Maps Street View photo. I stared at her. That's either impressive or alarming, I said. Probably both, she said. I made you a lasagna. You can close the door if you want. I'll leave it on the porch. I did not close the door. I stepped back and let her in. She sat at my kitchen table while I turned off the burner on the stir-fry. The lasagna was from scratch. I could tell from the smell, that kind of heavy, slow-cooked tomato that doesn't come out of a jar. She had her hands folded on the table, and she was looking at the window over the sink, like there was something interesting happening outside, which there wasn't. It was just the neighbor's fence. You didn't have to do this, I said. I know. How's the car? Fixed. It was the bumper mount and the headlight assembly. $820. She said it very precisely, like the number mattered. My insurance covered most of it. Good. I kept thinking about it, she said. You standing in the rain. You didn't know me. You just stopped. Anyone would have stopped, I said. She shook her head, just slightly. They didn't. 12 cars went by before you. I didn't have anything to say to that. I put 2 plates on the table and she served the lasagna and we ate, which was strange and also not strange at all. She asked about the electrical work. I told her about a heritage house job I was doing in Innisfil, all the old knob and tube wiring, how it takes twice as long, because you have to care about everything. She's listened like she was actually interested. She told me about the library, the children's programming she ran on Thursday afternoons, how she'd been driving that North Bay route to see her mother once a month for the past 2 years. Her mother had early-stage dementia. Her dad had passed when Fiona was in university. She didn't say any of this for sympathy. She just said it the way you say things when you're eating with someone, and it feels okay to be honest. She left at 9. She shook my hand at the door, which almost made me laugh. Not meanly, just because it was so formal after 2 hours of kitchen table conversation. I told her the lasagna was excellent, which it was. She said she hoped the Heritage House job went well. I closed the door and stood in my hallway for a moment. Then I went back to the kitchen and finished the dishes. She texted me 4 days later. She'd gotten my number from my business website, the contact form, and she said in the text that she knew that was slightly odd, but she wanted to tell me the library was hosting a local history exhibit in December, and I'd mentioned liking old houses and she thought I might be interested. She also said, at the end, or not, no pressure at all. I went to the exhibit. It was on a Thursday evening, a week before Christmas, and the library branch was warm and smelled like pine from the wreath on the circulation desk. There were maybe 30 people there, retirees mostly, a few couples, a man with a big camera who was clearly press. Fiona was running it. She was in her element, in a way that was different from the highway, different from my kitchen table. She moved between people easily. She knew every name. She laughed at the right moments and got quiet at the right moments. She introduced me to a man named Victor who'd done some of the historical research, and I spent 20 minutes looking at photos of Barrie in the 1890s, the old town hall, the ice harvesting on Kempenfelt Bay, the streets that don't exist anymore. At the end of the night, she found me by the coat rack. You came, she said. You invited me. I half expected you not to. I like old houses, I said. I told you. She smiled, the real version this time, not the almost smile from the ditch, the actual one. We got coffee after. Not a date, at least. That's not how either of us named it. Just coffee at the place across from the library that stays open late. We talked for an hour and a half. She told me she was going through the end of something, a relationship that had been finished for months before it was officially finished. She said she'd been on that highway the night I found her because the visit to her mother had been hard, and she'd been driving on a kind of autopilot that had no business being in charge of a vehicle. I think I needed someone to stop, she said. I'm glad I did. Me too. I walked her to her car, a rental while the Civic was in the shop. She said goodnight. She drove away. I walked the 3 blocks back to my truck with my hands in my pockets and the cold coming down clean and dry, the sleet long gone, just a proper Ontario winter night. I want to be honest about what came next, because I think people expect a certain kind of story when they hear the beginning of this one. A man stops for a woman on a highway. She shows up at his door. It sounds like a setup for something, a movie, a romance novel, whatever. And maybe it was something. I won't pretend the lasagna was just neighborly, but it moved slow. the way real things move slow. She called me in January when a pipe froze in the wall of her apartment, and the superintendent wasn't answering. I came over and confirmed it was the building's problem, not hers, and helped her write the maintenance request in the specific language that makes supers actually respond. It worked within 24 hours. She brought coffee to my job site in February, the Heritage House in Innisfil, because she was driving past anyway and asked if I wanted anything. She stood in the unfinished kitchen in her coat and looked at the exposed lath and original plaster and said, "This is beautiful," with total sincerity, which not many people say about a wall that looks like the inside of something that's been sick. In March, I went to one of her Thursday children's programs. Not because she asked me. She mentioned it once, offhand, and I showed up. She was reading to a group of 4 and 5-year-olds with a voice that was completely different from her regular voice. Bigger, rounder. The kids were completely locked in. I sat in the back on a tiny chair and felt like I was watching someone be exactly who they were supposed to be. She saw me when she was done and turned a shade of red I hadn't seen on her before. "You actually came," she said. "You mentioned it. I mention a lot of things." "I know," I said. "I came to this one. There's a thing I haven't talked about yet, and I should." In February, about a week after the job site coffee, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. When I picked up, it was a man who introduced himself as Fiona's ex. His name was Garrett. He was calm on the phone, which was worse than if he'd been angry. He said he knew I'd been spending time with Fiona, and he thought I should understand some things about the situation. He used the word situation 3 times. He said she had a pattern of latching on to people. He said she had a history. He said things that were designed to sound like concern but had the shape of something else. I let him finish. Then I said, "Did she ask you to call me?" He said no. "Then this is the last time we'll talk," I said, and hung up. I didn't tell Fiona right away. I sat with it for a few days, which I'm not sure was the right call, but I didn't want to bring it to her like an alarm, like something that required her to explain herself or defend herself to me. She didn't owe me her history. I hadn't earned that. When I did tell her, we were at my kitchen table again, different casserole, she'd started doing that. She went very still. "He called you." "Yeah. What did he say?" I told her, accurately, without editorializing. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "It's been 18 months since we broke up. He still has keys to my parents' house in North Bay." She paused. "My mother doesn't know she shouldn't let him in." That landed on me hard. "Fiona, I know. I'm dealing with it. My cousin is changing the locks next time she goes up. Has he done anything?" She shook her head. "He's not dangerous. He doesn't know how to be done." She looked at her plate. "He used to tell me the same things about myself that he told you. The latching on. The pattern. He said it enough that I started to believe it. I thought about the woman I'd found in the ditch, blank-faced, engine running, 12 cars going by. I thought about that highway. "I don't think any of that is true," I said. She looked up at me. "You made a lasagna for a stranger who stopped in the rain," I said. "That's not a pattern. That's just decency." She laughed, a little shakily. "You make it sound simple. It is simple." She shook her head, but she was still laughing. We finished dinner. She washed. I dried. The radio was on. Hockey game. Leafs losing again, as is tradition. At some point she handed me a pot and her hand stayed near mine for a second longer than necessary. I noticed. I think she meant for me to notice. I didn't say anything about it that night. It's June now. I'm telling this from the other side of it, which is why I can. In April, she started talking about leaving the library branch in Collingwood for a position in Barrie, a new role, programming coordinator for the whole regional system. She'd applied before I knew her. She found out she got it on a Tuesday afternoon, and she called me before she called anyone else, which she told me only after, a little embarrassed. I said, "I'm glad you called me first." She moved in. Not with me, her own apartment, a nice one, main floor, near the waterfront. We helped her carry boxes on a Saturday morning, me and my buddy, Kieran, and his girlfriend. Fiona had coffee and muffins ready at 8 in the morning for people she'd never met, because that's who she is. Kieran pulled me aside at one point by the moving truck and said, "I like her, man," with the particular emphasis of someone who has met a lot of your not great choices and is relieved. There's a bike trail along Kempenfelt Bay, the same bay from those old photographs at the library, the ice harvesting, the town that used to be, And we walk it sometimes on evenings when neither of us has anything pressing. She knows the names of more plants than I do. I know the names of more birds. We trade. I don't know exactly what to call what we are. That doesn't worry me the way it might have a year ago. Some things earn their names slowly. What I know is this. I wasn't supposed to be on Highway 17 that November. I was supposed to be in Sudbury watching the game. A basement flooded, and I turned around and it was raining, and I saw hazard lights and I stopped. She told me, once, on the trail, that the night I found her she'd been sitting in that ditch, thinking she had made every decision in her life incorrectly. Every single one. I said, and now? She thought about it. The bay was flat and gray-green, and there were geese doing what geese do. Not every decision, she said. I kept walking. She kept walking beside me. That was enough.